The real power of a pivot chart comes to the fore when you rearrange your data dynamically. A task that would take several minutes if done by hand takes just a few seconds when you summarize your data using a pivot chart. So now let's say that you have a pivot chart and you want to pivot it. You can pivot either the pivot chart itself or the pivot table behind it. So let's start out by pivoting the pivot table, which is on the left side of the screen. And I currently have the data laid out by year and month along the rows, which is along the horizontal axis on this line chart, and then company, which provides the firm A and firm B lines. So there are two separate lines. Each one represents a single company. If I were to remove company from the column labels area by dragging it out, then Excel creates a chart where it summarizes all of the data instead of separating it out by company. And now let's say that I want to create a separate line for each year. So in other words, I want to have January, February, and March, and then I want to have two separate lines representing the years 2009 and 2010. To do that, I can drag year from the row labels area to the column labels area, and Excel creates a graph with those two separate lines. If you have your pivot chart on a separate sheet within your workbook, then you can pivot the pivot chart on its own. So let's say, for example, that I click the pivot chart, and when I do, we still see the pivot table field list, but now the names of the areas have changed. So instead of the column area, we have what's called legend fields, and then we have axis fields, which was previously the row labels area. Every unique value in any field within the legend fields area will have a separate line or bar or column in the body of the chart. So for example, here we have year, and because I have data from 2009 and 2010, I have two lines, one red, one blue, summarizing data for 2009 and 2010. Now, if I want to pivot the pivot chart, I can do so normally. So for example, if I want to take a year and put it back in the axis fields area, I can do so and create a line chart which summarizes all revenue for 2009 and 2010 by month. And then I can add company back to the legend fields area to create two separate lines, one for firm A and one for firm B. And also, as with a pivot table, you can defer the layout update. So if you have a large pivot chart or a large pivot table and it takes time to summarize all the data, then you can check Defer Layout Update and then make your changes. And I'll just change back by removing company and putting year in the legend fields area. You'll notice that when I made those changes, the pivot chart and the pivot table did not change. But when I click Update, everything updates to reflect my changes. If you want to go back to live updating, to have the pivot chart and pivot table update as you make your changes, then you can uncheck the Defer Layout Update box. Changing the pivot chart's arrangement shifts the data's emphasis, enabling you to examine the data from different perspectives quickly and easily.